Hello and welcome to lesson 21. We're looking today at how important are the UK's media exports. Now this is all about the UK's cultural influences on the world. We've been looking at its political influences in terms of its work with the G7, the EU until this year. We've looked at its work on the United Nations Security Council, and also with NATO and how the UK can exert political clout, muscle, and boss countries around, or not in the case of Russia, but that's possibly a unique situation. But we now turn our attention to the UK's cultural influence and to what extent do we influence the world? Do we affect the world? So on this slide, you can see some of our programs that we export. So this slide's a few years old, but we've got Downton, Top Gear, Bake Off, good old Peppa Pig. So obviously these programs have gone around the world. They're loved by millions of families and children, adults around the world. They started here. Now, the task in your assignment is to explain why the UK's media exports have a growing global influence. The important idea is the fact that the influence, first of all, how they have an influence, and then maybe how is it a growing, increasing influence. And don't forget, at the end of this set of lessons, we have this synoptic task. We can't start it yet because we need to finish the classes and the lessons yet. But we're going on to this part where we're looking at does leaving the EU cause the UK to lose its global significance? To what extent do you agree with the statement? Well, bearing in mind that you can bring in this aspect, which is about the cultural influence, into that argument. So let's have a look at this. The UK's creative and media industry. Well, media exports are creative. So the exam board uses the phrase media exports, and that's reflected in the title. But here are some of the media exports that we might have. TV programs, plays and theatre, magazine and publishing. But if I just click next, I'll reveal all the other things that we could have included. So music is a very important media export around the world. British musicians, people like Ed Sheeran or Billie Eilish, they have a huge global influence through the music that they make. Art, very, very important. Books, just think about J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, that's gone around the world. So that's some of the things. For example, some of the theatre, the plays that we have gone around the world. They've copied and repeated in Broadway in New York, for example. Let's have a look at this one there. So the media exports in 2014 were worth a staggering £19.8 billion a year. That's what we've sold overseas. It's hugely significant because it's worth pretty much a tenth of all the money we make is through our media exports. And it's been growing quickly. It's one of the faster growing parts of our economy. Just to put a question over this data is 6 years old. Obviously, with the current corona crisis, all our economy is being affected at the minute. So just bearing in mind that this data is old and that what's happening now around the world is something which we're going to be writing about and studying about in geography lessons for the next century. Yeah, so we basically, that one there is the most important thing. I'm just going to skip to the next part of this slide. The question said explain the importance of. So you have to hit that word important. That's why they've given you a mark there. Credit quoting data once when it's being used to support a valid statement. This is the thing in geography. You've got to use the point, evidence, explain, PEE format for all your writing. So we make a point, we support it with data from the figure, and then we explain it. So this question is asking for a PEE approach: point, evidence, explain. Give a reason. So look over here. UK media exports are important. Tick. They have increased by 48.9%. Evidence. May continue to benefit the UK by creating jobs. So that's explaining. Here's another point. Media exports earn lots of money for the UK. Evidence, as it generated £19.8 billion. Explain. This will help the UK's balance of payments, or trade deficit, or GNP, GDP, GNI. That's basically GNI, which is, I'm surprised they use the phrase GNP there, because in the development part of the course is talking only about GNI, gross national income. But if you study economics or watch the news, you'll hear the term GDP, which is called gross domestic product, which is pretty similar to gross national income. At this stage, GCSE geography use those terms interchangeably. Point. Media exports are not important to the UK economy. Evidence, as they only generate 9% of the UK's exports. Explain. More money is made from IT, software and games. Okay, well, I don't really agree with that point, but at least they tried to explain it and used evidence from it. Media exports enhance the international reputation of the UK, point, and may attract overseas investment into the UK media businesses. Explain, but no evidence. Two marks for this, so you've got to get two reasons. So I'm assuming we have to do one reason for 1 mark, but it's got to be a right reason. Now, many people in the country and in our school couldn't do this question, so hopefully you can. It helps when you have the answer. Here's the answer. Films and TV programs from the world are viewed all around the world. No, I don't think that's really answering the question, but they give it. This is better, actually. People are influenced by, or they copy, UK lifestyles portrayed in films and TV programs. Really? Well, possibly. Media generates tourism. Yeah. UK media expertise attracts employees or filmmaking companies from around the world. Yeah. UK TV and films are produced in English, which is a global language. Yeah. People overseas are using British TV and films to learn English. Yeah. UK TV programs are copied in countries around the world. Now, yeah, those are good points, and actually any of the two of those would give you the marks. But, you know, I've got a problem with this question, because the question said, give 2 reasons that agree that it's growing. Now, I can't see anything there particularly about the growth. So what I would say is, this is how I'd answer it. I don't really like those answers, even though the example I gave them. I would say something like this. And I'd use, for each point, remember, you've got 1 mark per reason, and you have to do point, explain. So first point I'd say is this: UK and TV films are produced in English, which is a global language. And this is my explanation. And because English is increasingly spoken around the world, therefore more people are watching them. Can you see I've actually talked about the growing influence? People overseas are using British TV and films to learn English, and this is very true. My mother is Swedish, and as a boy I'd go to Sweden and we would watch TV, as you do. But in Sweden, a lot of the TV programs are not dubbed, so you can hear English being spoken and you have Swedish subtitles at the bottom. So effectively, TV was teaching my cousins English, because they could hear the words being spoken and they could read the Swedish, and they could make the link between the both. And that's what happened. Plus they got taught English in school. So I guess that's why it's got a growing influence, because it's actually making people, our media exports, our TV programs are actually helping people to speak English. Therefore we are influencing them. And because they are reaching more people, because there's a growing export around the world, therefore they're teaching more people English, and therefore we have a growing influence. You see, I'm really trying to make a point and double develop it or triple develop it. this one's quite interesting. UK TV programmes are copied in countries around the world. You'll see an example a little bit later on from the video. And this idea, for example, things like Strictly has been copied around the world. And therefore, we are influencing people's leisure activities. Say, for example, in an Indian version of Strictly, you're influencing more people, and more people might want to get into dancing. Now, for example, in the UK, there's 65 million people. In India, there's 1.4 billion people. So clearly, if Indian television copies a program like Strictly and turns it into an Indian version, you're increasingly going to suddenly have a much more larger influence. That's the idea. Okay, hopefully you get that now. So I don't really think that this really cuts the mustard as far as I'm concerned, and I would expect to see much more development of the ideas. I think these are just points, there's no explanation. Right, this activity is quite interesting actually. I'm going to just pause it and let you think about this in a moment. UK TV programmes are a major export around the world. Some are sold as ready-made programmes to other countries, while others are dubbed into the local language. Which of these factors do you think are important in the global success of the UK TV industry? Rewrite this list in your opinion in your order of priority. So have a look at these ones here, A, B, C, D, E. Have a go at these, and what's the top reason? Why do you think we have an increasing influence through our TV programs? So can you put these into rank order, 1 being the main reason, 5 the least, and then can you try to justify your choice of the first question? Now I'm going to pause it now, then I'll give you some of my thoughts, but write your ideas down first, then I'll pause it. Hitting the pause button now. Okay, well, I don't know about you, but I think the main reason is A. Clearly, if English is widely spoken, and it's increasingly being spoken because of the growth of population in countries which are learning English, therefore there's a more of a chance that they might want to watch our TV programs.
The man speaking fluent Farsi is, of course, Jeremy Clarkson.
Italia, Monte Carlo, Albany, Loughborough.
The joke about Loughborough might lose something in translation, but Iran's rather partial to Top Gear. And in French Bake Off, they are today making
du cake.
And Finland?
What's number 1 in British TV in Finland?
At the moment, it's definitely Downton Abbey.
Tamo's come here to buy TV for Finland, a place where Doctor Who hasn't really taken off, but an old British police programme has.
Old series called Heartbeat from ITV. We are making reruns, and the audience, the share is absolutely amazing.
TV is becoming increasingly globalised, and if you want to go shopping, you come to events like this.
This event began 37 years ago. Then it was in a small hotel in Brighton. There were 24 people. Now, as you can see, we have row after row after row, 600 booths, 720 buyers, all watching television 10 hours a day, determining what the world is going to be watching on TV.
Increasingly, it's global producers creating global brands and then adapting them. Take Strictly Come Dancing. Unlike Britain, in India, there are no nasty judges.
Best performance Jhalak Dikhlaja has ever seen.
If I'm honest, probably the judges there tend to be on the more positive side, so there's less criticism. Another example of that might be, I was watching a version of it in Panama and found, even in week 1, that the judges were handing out 10s.
US programming is suffering at the moment. No matter how good US series you have and you put it on the schedule, the figures are quite low.
Why?
And I don't know. That's something I have discussed with my colleagues all over Europe, and everybody's feeling somehow the same.
The new drama superpower in the Middle East is Turkey. And the market everyone wants to break is China. This is their master chef. But the biggest stir has been created by this man, Sherlock, played by Benedict Cumberbatch.
Why Benedict?
I don't know. He got this nickname in Chinese fans, Juan Fu, Curly Fu.
These then are the world's most powerful TV viewers. A tear or a smile on these faces, and it could be very big news. David Sillito, BBC News, Liverpool.
Because you can see that where in 2013 we sold our TV shows to, and if you look at America, spent £500 million buying our TV programs. So just think about US, Australia, Canada. Why might they be the biggest markets? You probably realise clearly they speak English, therefore it's the same language. So that's probably why these have the biggest amount of sales. Okay, and that's the slide.